Friends, do you ever get something stuck in your head and it just won't leave? I'm not talking about like a meme or an earworm or something from the external world that becomes lodged inside of your brain. No, have you ever had an idea that is just stuck with you and no matter what you do, you can't get rid of it? It's not even a good idea, but it just won't leave. That's the position I'm in right now, and it's time to get rid of this thing that's been in my brain for way too long. There are 3 things that have contributed to us reaching this point. Thing number 1. Have you ever watched the video for the safety dance by Men Without Hats? The answer is almost certainly no. I encourage you to go and watch it, not because it's good, but because you just need to experience this. Anyway, the music video for the safety dance is this sort of pseudo-medieval village fair. People are wearing folk costume. There's Morris dancers. There's a jester. It is decidedly in the Ren Fair vein, but it's called the safety dance. Thing number 2, which some of you may be very aware of, is that I have a stash overflow problem caused in no small part by, I went through a phase of getting really into mystery fabric. Like, yeah, sure, send me 60 meters of fabric for £60. I'd love that. Yeah, that was a miscalculation. It was actually 120 meters, and it's all right here. The first time I bought a mystery grab bag of fabric because I had a video idea, one of the things that was in this mystery grab bag of fabric was this. 3 meters of stretchy fluorescent high vis fabric. And then later I did was supposed to be 60 meters, turned out to be 120 meters of mystery fabric, and they gave me this. 3 meters of, thankfully not stretchy, yellow fluorescent high-vis fabric. But before we get into all of that nonsense, I think now is a great time to tell you that this video is sponsored by Craftsy.
It's been over a decade since I was drawing regularly, and I've been really meaning to get back into it, but it's been so long I didn't know where to start. So I found the Sketching 101 class by Mary Fan really helpful as a starting place. It covers absolute basics for someone who's never drawn as an adult, and really focuses on playing around with simple techniques which can form the basis of developing your skills. Mary Fan is an extremely talented but also a superb teacher who makes this very accessible, which is the standard I've come to expect from Craftsy experts. Like all Craftsy classes, it's broken down into small chunks with lots of step-by-step demonstrations so I can follow along at my own pace.
With over 2,000 video classes in more than 20 categories, Craftsy is an amazing online community for all kinds of creative skills.
Whether you're interested in crochet, quilting, painting, sewing, baking, art, knitting, or many other creative skills, Craftsy has something for you.
If you'd like to join Craftsy, the first 1,000 people to join using the link in my description or the QR code that's appearing on screen, new members will get a full year of premium membership to Craftsy for only $1.49. And then the final piece to this puzzle, the final key that slotted everything together and solidified the fact that this really silly idea that I'd had since I'd seen that music video did need to happen, was critically acclaimed work of fiction / video game, Tactical Breach Wizards, which features my absolute favourite visual character design of any media that there has ever been, the Traffic Warlock. So I have 2 kinds of fluorescent fabric. I have a Halloween duvet cover in this much more neon than I expected orange print, which I figured I could use for lining and stuff. And I have, arriving hopefully today, a 25-meter roll of high-vis tape. And we're making a safety wizard. Why do I do this to myself and you? Now I'm up against it if I want to get this done in time for April Fool's Day, which feels appropriate, so we better crack on. So we don't really have time to do anything too complicated. This is the giant folder of all of the patterns that I have ever printed or drafted. I think we're probably going to at least start with one of these as a base. I do have a doublet pattern, which I don't love. I wasn't super pleased with how that came out. I think I might be thinking more along the lines of a fitted kirtle. From past experience doing Lady Jessica, I know that I can do a fitted kirtle in a stretch fabric, and that works really, really well. Obviously, I only have 3 meters of the fabric, but I think that's probably okay because I'm not going to make a giant skirt on this. That doesn't feel very safety. My main concern, now that I'm revisiting this, it's not really stretchy. It's it's just inconveniently wiggly. So maybe we revisit this because, so this stuff is extremely thin. I can see you through it. But this stuff, the yellow, is a bit more robust. I cannot, in fact, see through this one. So maybe we make a fitted kirtle out of this, stick a zip in it, because that works fine. And then we make a surcoat out of the other stuff and line it with the orange Halloween fabric. Brilliant. Thank you for being my rubber duck. So in terms of the actual pattern, I have a slight version control problem. Every single person you ever speak to will tell you that if you're making alterations to the pattern, you should make a fresh copy of the pattern, make the alterations to the copy so that you have every iteration previously stored. And what I will add to that is write extremely good descriptions of what they are on the pieces, or you will very quickly find yourself in a position where you have 6 versions of a pattern that are ever so slightly different from each other, and you don't know which one's which. That says V2 on it, which is moderately helpful. This says blue skeleton version, which is a little bit more helpful, because I remember specifically which one that was. Fitted kirtle front, scoop next, modest skirt. Version 2. I think that is the version that I want. And now we have sleeve problems. This is the version of the sleeve that I made for the, altered for Purple Halloween. The main problem I had with this is that it's very tight over here. I have very square, very broad shoulders for my size. And then I altered it for when I used this for Lady Jessica, I think went very overboard. From memory, the rest of it was pretty good. It was just, I've got a good 1.5 inches of extra. Do I mind that? Maybe I don't mind that. Maybe I've only ever tested this in a stretch fabric. Maybe we treat this as a wearable mock-up because God knows it's not doing anything else. Or maybe we just go for it. Maybe we see how much fabric we've got. When it comes to the surcoat, well, I'm gonna have to make some decisions. I could do a sideless surcoat, which is very cool and would be very easy, is very feminine coded. Or I could do something more along the lines of a coat or a robe, which we could do with just rectangles. Could potentially even just use my 18th century wrapping gown pattern because we're not worried about how historically accurate this is. That's not a thing. There is one more pattern in this folder that I think could potentially add something interesting to this costume. Let's start with the kirtle and the surcoat and leave that as a stretch goal because that's already, once you add in putting on the trim, which hasn't even arrived yet, that's a lot to ask. So let's start there. Am I drawing directly onto this fabric with a Sharpie? Yes! So I only draft my kirtle patterns down to mid-hip, and then I make it my problem to sketch out the skirt every time. Are you at an angle? You're at an angle. Maybe the Sharpie wasn't the best plan. I also tend to put, am I even in frame? I also tend to put more fullness in the sides than in the front. And the back I do a bit more, but this is the front. If you have too much fullness in the front, all it does is swoops between your legs and causes you problems. Ask me how I know. It's wrong again. I did not think this through. Okay, I think that's better. I am, however, going to keep those lines because I don't care. That's going to be like here. This is going to be a narrower skirt, I think, than I even anticipated, but that's okay. We can do that. This is going to be here, that, and that. It's probably about right. So we'll cut this out and then see if we've got enough fabric for the second bit. If I was an invisible zip, where would I be? Oh, I bet I'd be there. Yeah, are these long enough? They're probably long enough. Okay, well, that invisible zip isn't. It's okay. The yellow and black is not the worst thing. It's on theme, I guess, and this may surprise you guys to learn. This fabric is not that great to work with. Time to find out if I can iron this without melting it. Yes, I can. Okay, these sleeves are going back on the drawing board. They're too tight. I think, however, for this purpose, they are just about doable, so I'm going to leave them as is. I just will not use this pattern again. At least not on anything that isn't stretched. Yeah, I'm not jazzed about the arm-shoulder situation on this, but doesn't have to be practical, just has to exist. So, it is extant. I have not finished the edges yet, because I figured the tape has now arrived. I think I'm probably going to use that to finish the edges. That feels appropriate. I think that's my next step. And then we can worry about the surcoat or robe that I'm going to put on over the top. This is not a good fit. I maybe need to do some serious pattern revisions on this, or potentially I used the wrong version. See previous point of having like 6 unlabeled versions of the same pattern and not knowing which one is right. Reflective tape is on. A tape is the center front, which hides the not invisible zip. I may put a press stud on there if I think it needs it, but honestly, the tape is really quite stiff, so I don't think it does. Oh, I haven't trimmed those threads. That's problematic. So for the hem, I actually folded it in half, sewed it on like a binding, which has worked quite nicely, because after doing the neckline and the sleeves, which are shaped, there's just a lot of like folding that had to go on and that. Not psyched about it. Had to take some out of the sleeve cap, still was too big. Not actually any better in terms of not feeling like I'm going to hulk out of it. My shoulder is actually filling that out fine, but I think what I actually need to do is make the back wider. So this is currently looking very safety. It's not looking very wizard yet. So I think we do, before I decide whether I want to make any further changes to this, I think we should press on with the robe. Now I'm considering a couple of options with the robe. Option 1 is we just do rectangles. That will work. It will be very square. I'm thinking maybe either elbow or bracelet length sleeves on the robe, and I'm thinking I want it to come to like below knee, mid calf. So we could just do rectangles. We could also, sorry, I keep pausing because there's this weird noise in the room. Took me ages to figure out what it was. I bought a clock. Moving on. I could use the wrapping gown pattern or something similar to the wrapping gown pattern. That eats a lot of fabric, which isn't inherently a problem, but I am thinking about the secondary thing. I was considering maybe, hopefully, being able to squeeze out of this fabric as well. What I think I might do, because I'll be able to like tessellate it better, is a bit of a combination. So I think straight from the point of shoulder down to probably like waist, then a bit of a flare. I can tessellate those quite nicely on the fabric, and then I can have a straight cut piece for each of the sleeves, and then it'll have a little bit of shaping and a bit of flare. Not overly worried about this being like super full, and I think that would give me enough fabric left over to do some additions. And I'm going to line it the bright orange Halloween fabric, just because I think that sounds like a hoot. That bright green high vis fabric is kind of wibbly, not very stable. I think it will look more like a robe if I give it some structure and some body, even though the very cheap Halloween bedsheet fabric is also lightweight and wibbly. By their powers combined, I think it will have some semblance of body and structure and look like an outer garment. Awesome, very pleased with that. Let's rack on, see how we go. Have I ever told you guys my theory that scissors are the best possible pattern weights? They're heavy, they're pointy, so you can get into the corners of your pattern piece. A lot of really good things about scissors. So what I think I'm going to do, this is not how I want this arranged. Okay, let me reset and then I'll explain what I think. Who could have imagined there were so many logistics to making a high-vis wizard robe? Oh, this is so wibbly. I could actually flare this more. I'm going to flare this more. So my annoying problem is that I am making this 110 centimeters long, and I only have a meter long ruler. That's probably about right. I was wondering why the edges of this fabric, where it had been cut by the store, were so wibbly. I'm learning why those edges are so wibbly. My scissors, oh. No, actually my scissors. I brought the meter rule round, but not the scissors. Safety first. Safety wizard would not be pleased if I was walking around holding my scissors the wrong way, so I definitely didn't do that. Oh, I was going to make this wider. Back round we go. Okay, let's try that one again. Okay, I'm just going to have to resign myself to the fact that I am going to be walking around this table a million billion times. How's everybody holding up, given, you know, the horrors? One thing I've really enjoyed focusing on is the blog I've been writing for Ko-fi and membership. It's not anything particularly groundbreaking. I just talk about what books I've been reading, but also it's just really nice. First week of every month I sit down and think of what books I've read in the previous month, what I thought of them. I've been very lucky, most of them have been good, or if they haven't been good, they've at least been enjoyable. I got out of the habit of reading for a really long time. I don't know, it's just nice. I almost feel like I want to read more because I want to like put a lot of things in the blog. That kind of incentivizing doesn't normally work on me. But this time around, seems to be good. Cool, so I've got my front and back pieces. I need to cut some sleeves, which will just be rectangles. Then I need to figure out how we're gonna make this duvet cover. I hope I've got enough fabric in that duvet cover. Don't want to be ambitious, but I think we might just manage this. The sleeves might be different, but I think we might squeeze the whole robe lining out of this honestly kind of shocking Halloween sheet set. Like, I never have astronomical expectations out of Halloween sheets, but they're normally better than this. Medium-term viewers of the channel will be aware that I've made quite a few things out of Halloween sheets, and they've always been pretty okay. I need to go over there now. Whoops. Who would have thought that all of those years making surcoats in like 2 hours would pay off in the form of a safety wizard? I'm going to be honest and say that I think even if you did predict the payoff, the safety wizard is probably a surprise. I have one slippery fabric and one grippy fabric. This is not making for happy ash times. This is actually poking off by just like the tiniest bit. I'm just going to make it thinner. That was at a weird angle anyway. Is it big enough? No! How frustrating. On the other hand, pillowcase. My whole workroom is now just covered with bits of neon high visibility fabric and Halloween stuff, but the Halloween stuff, we're used to it. It's like a permanent fixture. Yes, I could spend my time unpicking this poorly overlocked edge. However, have you considered that I could also just cut it off and it will not make very much difference in the grand scheme of things? To the floor where you belong. Yes, I will sneak a tiny extra bit of fabric out of the thing that is slightly too small. God bless modern production sewing and their stupidly long stitch lengths that are incredibly easy to unpick. Is not remotely square, but okay. You did your best. You know what? Gonna go with that. It's not 100% right, but it's close enough. I do this every time. I should really have made a bigger difference in length and the width of the rectangle, because otherwise I just end up with these squares and I'm like, which way round did I mean for this to go? I think it's that way. Absolutely a precision exercise. Let's sew some stuff together. I think I'm gonna do outer shell, lining, put all the tape on the outer shell, then join them together. Turns out I made some bad choices when cutting the shoulder, so we're just gonna cut that off and pretend that never happened. It's fine. Everything's fine. Me, measure twice, cut once. We don't have time for that, Susan. Good enough. Okay, so we are now joined at the shoulders, and next I will insert the sleeves. Just remember which way around the sleeves are. Are they wider than they are long, or are they longer than they are wide? This would probably be more different if I had better cutting accuracy. We're just going to go with that. The top. I have something that is discernibly robe shaped. Underarm and side seams are still open. Did occur to me when sewing on the sleeves, which I definitely did correctly. Can't imagine why you would think otherwise. They're right now. While I was sewing the sleeves on, it occurred to me that putting the reflective tape on would probably be easier with it flat. So we're going to do that next. I know I want to do some bands going around the hem and the sleeves. I think that would be cool. But I'm also wondering, I've got a lot of like back real estate, and since I cannot, like a traffic warlock, strap a smoking tire to my back. I mean, I could, but that's more work than I'm willing to put in for one video. I don't know, it would be cool to have like a design or something on the back of the robe. The tape does not like to go around corners, so doing anything in a circle I think is going to be a challenge. I could do a star. Do you reckon I could do a star? Probably worth a shot. I should maybe like pin that in place before I try and... Let's not wing putting a star on the back of the robe. That seems like a bad plan. Hot damn, you guys, that was so much easier than I thought it was going to be. Yeah, I just cut 5 strips of the tape of the same length and wiggled them around until they made points, and now it's a pentagram. So my slight problem is I'm not sure I can pin through this. So I don't know how I'm gonna... Are we gonna tape this in place? Oh, that feels like such a janky option. To my horror and dismay, this appears to be working. 20 years I've been sewing. Sewing the star on was extremely satisfying. If you've ever learned how to draw 5-pointed stars in one continuous line, it was just like doing that, but on a sewing machine. It was great. The problem is that now, in punishment for my hubris, I have to try and get the sellotape off. This is not easy. I wonder what happens if I heat it up. I haven't been silly. I've tested a piece of the fabric and I've tested a piece of the tape, the reflective tape, and checked that they're okay to be ironed. Genuinely can't tell if I've made it better or worse. I think it's exactly the same. I think it has made it zero difference whatsoever. I'm just gonna have to sit here and suffer. So if you are ever tempted to tape something onto your fabric, I can recommend masking tape, or even better, don't tape your sewing projects. That's not what that's for. Anyway, since I've got you here and will be occupied for quite some time, I'm very much enjoying being back on Tumblr. That is a net positive experience. Very open for suggestions of cool people I can follow on Tumblr. I find with sites like Instagram and YouTube, you can follow someone for months or even years, and then they'll just casually drop into conversation that they think J.K. Rowling's great. People on Tumblr are not going to let you go more than about a week without telling you their terrible opinions, so it's just, you don't get invested. I don't know, I like it, it's different. It's been a while since we talked about books and TV shows on the channel. Here is a books and TV shows update for those of you who don't follow me in a paid fashion and therefore get the blogs. I'm halfway through another TV show. A whole 2 TV shows this year. Well, I haven't got to the end of this one yet. The problem is that the TV show we picked is HBO's Chernobyl. It's very good. I may never sleep again. Probably the best cosmic horror I've ever seen. Cannot in good faith recommend anybody watches it. Like you should, but strap in. You're not going to enjoy this experience. Books-wise, I'm on a bit of a tear at the moment. I read Belladonna and Foxglove pretty much back to back. They are by, I know people's names, Adeline Grace. If I say that they're amazing trash, do you get what I mean? This is not derogatory, but they are trash. Just incredible. Really enjoyed them. Massively enjoyed them. Both heroines, to my undiagnosed but we're pretty sure eye, very autistic coded. I enjoyed that. I appreciated it. If you're put off by the first one being like, ooh, it's a love triangle, it's not. It's not a love triangle at all. That is kind of a spoiler, but I feel like this puts off more people than it attracts. It's not a love triangle. The second one is also not a love triangle, though I could see how you would like try and spin it that way. It's very much a love dyad with a please leave me alone node added. Yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that analogy either. After that, I tried to read The Shadow Veil, thinking it was just another book in the same universe as her previous trilogy. It's not. It directly follows on from her previous trilogy. I don't remember what happened in those books. I read them at a really weird time, so we're reading the Serpent and Dove trilogy all over again. I really like these books. The writing style is a little bit more grown up than most young adult, which has been really refreshing because I've read a lot of very young adult recently. But at the same time, she has that YA thing of zero shame and zero chill. No spoilers for The Shadow Veil, but there are vampires now. We can have vampires now. What I am finding, and this is entirely the fault of, I have a young adult book subscription box and I've gone way too many years not keeping up with reading them all. I also, long time ago, worked as a children's bookseller. I just have a lot of YA. And don't get me wrong, I like it, but I'm really missing adult fantasy, because it's so hard to find good adult fantasy. At this point, people are going to try and give me adult fantasy recs, and I just want to make a couple of things clear. 1, I don't want to read doorstops written by white dudes. I don't care if your white dude is special. I don't want to read them. 2, no really, I will not read Brandon Sanderson. Stop asking. 3, I will also accept sci-fi. Do love sci-fi. Good sci-fi is slightly easier to find than good fantasy. I did read the Hugo Award Best Novel nominee shortlist, with the exception of John Scalzi. I know I don't like John Scalzi. So for reference, Witch King, superb, slam dunk, everything that I love. Translation state, really good. Few wibbles here and there, but in general, solid. Adventures of Elmina Al-Sarafi, enjoyed it way more than I was expecting. Extremely pleasant. Some Desperate Glory, one of the worst things I've read in years, genuinely made me angry. Was that all of them? Feels like there should be another one. Saint of Bright Doors should have won. Definitely a first novel. Ropey in places. Genuinely one of the most visionary books that I've read in a really long time. More like that, please. I think that's the most of the tape that I'm getting off. It was worth it. I'm gonna go to bed now. Tell me good books. Bonus points for queer themes, especially if the queer themes are like some sad wizards who fall in love with each other and in the end it's all happy and okay. That's my jam. If you can give me sad wizard romance that's happy in the end, I will forgive a lot of other problems. I really need to go to bed. Feels like a terrible place to have the mic, but okay. So I completed the back, and then I wanted to do some bands on the sleeves and on the hem. I know I've kept it flat this whole time. Now is the time to start sewing it up. And I gaily sewed up one sleeve, and then I started to sew up the side and discovered a problem. Can you see that? Can you see how the waists are not in the same place? It took me a minute. It would appear that I've misaligned the sleeves. So I guess we're going to unpick all of this and try again, which is fine, completely okay, not remotely a total pain in the neck when I'm on a deadline. Not that at all. I suppose if the safety wizard teaches us anything, it is the importance of precision and attention to detail. What can I say? I am not inherently a safety wizard. I just am cosplaying as one. Why would you guys do this to me? The whole time you've been letting me call this the safety wizard, when High Visard was right there. I've had a challenging evening. So I reset the sleeves on the robe and sewed the robe up. What was that? Stitch rippers. Got a death wish. I unpicked the sleeves. I sewed the sleeves back on. I sewed the side seams up. I added High Vis. Putting the tape on the very curved robe was a time, but we managed it. I also have 2 sleeve linings and 1 body lining, which will look like this from the right side. I only ran out of bobbin thread twice this evening, which is about 2 times more than I ever want to run out of bobbin thread. I realise we've been using basically the same technology for 150 years, but they should invent a bobbin that doesn't run out. Anyway, the long and short of it is, finally, after all of this time, I have most of the construction done. I now need to press everything, and then I can bag line the robe. The great trial of making something lined with sleeves is that you can't sew it all together, because if you do, well, no. There is a way of just leaving a small opening and turning the whole thing through that, but it's really complicated and I can't make my brain do that at this time of night. So we're going to sew the sleeves to the sleeves, the body to the body, turn everything inside out, and then join it up around the armholes inside. If I'm feeling fancy, I will do that by hand, and if I'm not, I will fold the seam allowances inwards and top stitch it, because it's on the inside, and this is a High Vis wizard robe. No one cares about how good my construction is, which is probably for the best. Don't look too hard at how this reflective tape has been sewn on in many of the places. All of that feels like a tomorrow problem. This dress is not great for filming. I don't think this is the best mic position. Anyway, so we have an inside out wizard's robe. So the sleeves are separate from the body, so in theory the sleeves should pull out like this. Then you shove them into the worm. That's gonna need some pressing, but it's basically fine. And then the body, do I care enough to clip these seams? I care enough to clip these corners. Trim right back the part of the seam allowance that has reflective tape on it. I just don't need to deal with bonus reflective tape in the seam allowance. And then you get to do the very fun thing of turning the whole thing out through one of the armholes. It's like a magic trick. It's like a really bad magic trick. So that obviously needs a whole lot of pressing and fussing, but in theory, don't mind that. That's a robe. It's a robe. Okay, I'm going to press the crap out of it, and then I'm going to seal up the inside of the armholes, and then, because I think we have time, I'm going to talk about the stretch goal. Okay, we're back on this side. We have a kirtle, we have a robe. I have an idea for one final additional accessory, which is not a complete make. It will just be altering something I already have. However, I feel like this could use just like one more little bit of detail. And I have this relatively large piece of the robe fabric left, which, let's be honest, I ain't using for anything else. So this is the Londinium hood pattern by Opus Elenae. I have been wanting to make this for a really long time, and I cannot believe I am finally doing it under these circumstances. It's pretty simple. You have the hood, you have the gusset, which goes in here so it flares over your shoulders. It does also have a pattern piece for a liripipe. However, given that this is a safety wizard, I think I'm going to skip the liripipe because a long trailing bit of fabric doesn't sound especially safe to me. I think I have more or less exactly the right amount of fabric left. There will obviously be a bunch of scraps. I'm not too worried about the scraps. They'll go into the scrap pile. They maybe won't go into future patchwork projects, but you never know. I should do a video about how I sort my scraps. Future problem. Anyway, like I said, not too many steps, not too many pieces. Let's smash this out.
Approximately 30 minutes later, it's a hood. This is a big cape. I had not really appreciated how big this cape is. This bit, however, yeah, no. I might need to go for the bigger size because this is quite tight. Obviously, I'm not doing this properly. I'm not going to line it or anything. I am, however, going to go to town with the reflective trim. I don't think, so given that the hood itself is quite tight on me and the ideas that I have for accessories, I don't think I'm going to put too much effort on the hood. This big cape, however, a lot of the historical examples of these hoods have dagged edges, which means they're cut in a fancy pattern. I don't think I can do a fancy pattern in this fabric, but I think with the assistance of some reflective tape, we could have a bit of something going on. I might shorten it. I'm thinking about how much of the star in the back it's going to cover up, and I might shorten the cape. But overall, this is working great. So I learnt my lesson about the tape and decided I was instead going to use washi tape this time around, and I think I'm going to try and remove it as I go. Unfortunately, the first washi tape I tried doesn't stick very well. I knew it didn't stick very well. I don't know what I was thinking. So I switched to this somewhat fancier stuff instead, and now we have an edge, and let's hope it works. Okay, so the washi tape was not the best idea. It did come off a bit cleaner, however, it didn't quite have the staying power of the regular sellotape. I think the answer to this situation is use sellotape, but peel it off before you sew over it. I do, however, now have a very nice reflective crenellated edge on this hood. So all I need to do is trim it down. I do a bit wish I'd figured that out before I used my fancy Japanese washi tape on it, but what you buy things for, to use them. There's no point in hoarding it forever. I can only apologize to Yayoi Kusama. Actually, out of all of the artists whose work I saw in Japan, Yayoi Kusama is probably the one who would look at what I'm doing and go, all right, I see it. So anyway, the robe's done, the kirtle's done, the hood's nearly done. However, there's one very final important thing to do. Because how can you be a wizard without a hat? I don't think I'm going to do anything too permanent or too complicated to this hat. I've got two wizard/witch hats, this one and a red one, and I use them for a surprisingly large amount of things, so I don't want to permanently alter this. I'd like to be able to keep using it, but I think we can put a little bit of a band on here, some yellow material, and maybe a band of the high vis, and maybe if we get spicy, I'll write something on it. But other than that and trimming down the hood, I think we're nearly done. I think tomorrow morning we can shoot the reveal. I thought this was going to be a quick project. So I have a hat band. I considered doing a wider band with 2 strips of reflective tape, but then I realized that would make me look like a traffic cone, so we're not going to do that. But I think it's a little bit plain. I think it needs something on it. So we will consult the appropriate academic sources, courtesy of the heady combination of black Sharpie and gold gel pen. Yeah, I think that'll do.
Ha! Respirators are good and important, but also I hate them so much. So here we are at last, at the end. Final thoughts. Kirtle, not great. Used the wrong pattern, I think. Actual execution, not bad. I think the minimal use of tape was really good. It worked really well. The hem is a good length. The fit is just garbage. The robe would do something slightly differently in terms of patterning. It does have a real tendency to slide off my shoulders. That's something I could fix really easily by just putting a little pleat in the centre back, I think. The star, really impactful. Very happy with my decision to line it. Very happy with the lining fabric. It feels like a really nice halfway point between wizard and safety. The hood, glad I made it. Excited to discover that it's not quite the right size, which is fine. I have a very large skull. Think I need the size up, but this was just about acceptable. Really happy with how quick it was to put together. Really happy with the overall impact. Think it was exactly what this costume needed. Hat could have done a slightly more professional job. Don't care that I didn't. 10 out of 10. Has the impact. Exactly what I wanted. The accessories were deeply uncomfortable and impractical, but sold the look. Overall impression, much better than I was expecting. I feel like it doesn't quite have... There's an impact to the Traffic Warlock design from Tactical Breach Wizards. So I always imagine that robe as being made out of raincoat material. You know, the high vis raincoats that are super bulky and stiff. That just wasn't the materials that I was working with today, but I kind of feel like this could have used some more bulk. I don't think it was achievable with what I was working with, but if I was going to do a similar concept again, which I sincerely hope that I am not, because honestly, when am I ever going to use any of this? But if I was going to do a similar concept again and I was choosing my own materials, I would go for things with a bit more structure. In conclusion, please don't write a LARP where I have to wear something like this, because this is just uncomfortable enough that I would make a whole new outfit. And neither of us want that. Super delighted with it. Let's never do that again. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to keep the YouTube gods happy. Follow me on Tumblr or Instagram or TikTok or any of the other places linked in the description below. And also down in the description box you'll find a link to my Ko-fi page where you can make a one-off or recurring donation to support the channel, or become a channel member here on YouTube, which gets you early access to all of my videos, plus a couple of extra fun goodies. Since it would seem I have to replace the computer I edit on, which is terrifying me just a tiny little bit, I really appreciate everyone who supports the channel, and I couldn't do what I do without your help. Quite literally. I'm dying to take this off. Dream big, and I'll see you next time.